My name is Reggie Bast, and I chose to do my presentation on ancient Greek literature. I looked at three eras. We'll start off with the pre-classical era, where you see the commonly known Homer's Odyssey and the Iliad. It went from about 800 BCE to 400 BCE. Not many pieces of work have been recovered from this period. It's quite a long time ago. And the most notable, obviously, recovered pieces are the Iliad and the Odyssey. So in case you don't know what those are, they're a pair of epic poems attributed to pre-classic Greek poet Homer. They cover the final weeks of the 10-year siege of Troy. If you guys have seen the movie Troy, that's what it's about with the Trojan horse. It's debatably fictional, they're not sure. And the return home of the hero Odysseus over the course of 10 years back to Ithaca. They were thought to have been written around 800 BC, so the start of the era. Little is known about Homer, but it is said by many scholars that he was familiar with the plains of Troy due to the geographical accuracy within the poem, which means he'd actually live in what is now known as Turkey, other than Greece. It's inspired a lot of work. People who are involved in English, writers, they really like it. It inspired work as soon as 400 years later, when Euripides recounted the events in a satirical way with the satyr play Cyclops. The 1995 film Ulysses Gaze, starring Harvey Keitel, is an adaptation of the Odyssey. 2000 film O Brother, Where Art Thou, written and directed by the Coen brothers, who also did Fargo, No Country for Old Men, is loosely based upon the poems. And more direct reference, the cartoon The Simpsons had an episode which consisted of a retelling of the Odyssey with Homer Simpson in place of Odysseus. You can see there, that's him declaring his victory. We move now into, I guess, a more relative period, the classic period. This is when we see the rise of many forms of art today. Comedy, tragedy was invented then, most play or poet writing formats. It was a short period because it kind of consisted of a few people that dominated the scene. So obviously they weren't around for 400 years. So we see lyrical poetry being born, odes, pastorals, elegies, drama, and many more themes. The three noted great drama writers of the time were Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. Sophocles wrote this play called Oedipus Tyrannus that I'm going to look into a bit more in depth here. It's an Athenian drama, premiered in 429 BCE. Second of Sophocles' three Theban plays is also known as Oedipus the King and Oedipus Rex, just through translation. The plot, I'll just tell you, it's long to put into a slide. It starts off, there's a king, Oedipus, in a town called Thebes. He took over the town because they were trapped by the Sphinx. It's a pretty obscure plot, actually. It's kind of weird. I think the guy did a lot of drugs, but there's a plague in his town. Everyone's dying, and no one knows how to fix it. So he sends his brother-in-law, Creon, to go to an oracle, like a prophet, someone who can see the future. And he tells him that whoever, the plague won't go away until they avenge the death of their previous king, Laius. He was murdered, and they have to exile the person who murdered him. So Oedipus calls for the oracle to come to him, and he does. And he tells him that Oedipus himself was the one who killed the king. Obviously, he doesn't see that as possible. He gets mad and accuses his brother-in-law, Creon, of conspiring with the oracle to have himself exiled and Creon take over the throne. So he accuses that Creon could have been the one that killed him. And so they have this big argument. His wife, who is also there, says that oracles are sometimes wrong because there was an oracle that came to her, and she used to be married to Laius. She's the former queen. And she said that they had a son, or they had a prophecy that their son would kill the father. So the father banished the son in a mountain when he was like a few days old, like 3 days old, and he left him up there to die, basically. And obviously not possible that he would have killed his own father, so sometimes they're wrong. And they're trying to find out who killed the king and all this, and it comes across that he was killed by a band of thieves while traveling. And it comes to Oedipus' attention that once he was traveling and he encountered a caravan and he killed all of them because, I don't know, they're chirping him or something like that. And so yeah, he killed all of them, and he thinks, well, maybe that was the king. Maybe this is true. So there's one witness that survived, and he comes and says that he actually knew Oedipus and that he found him. Oh, I missed a big plot point. I apologize. There was also a prophecy that the guy told him when he said he killed his father, that he'd also sleep with his mother. It's really weird. It really is. But so the shepherd comes in, the only witness that survived, and said that he knew Oedipus. He found him on a mountain when he was a baby, took him far away to some other town where he knew he would never come back to Thebes, but somehow he made his way back, survived, became king, inevitably slept with his mother, married her. Turns out he did kill his father. Everything comes true. His wife and mother hangs herself. Oedipus goes into the castle, blinds himself, and has himself exiled, and his brother-in-law takes over the throne. So, yeah, that's about it. There's a few themes within the play that I looked into that are pretty common through any literary works in classic Greece. Fate. The play held a message to the viewer not to avoid fate. Throughout the play, many oracles and prophets were ignored, and many characters attempted to avoid prophecies. State control. A message to the state, the government, could be found within the play, reminding government rulers that they were not exempt from the inevitable and that no amount of power could overcome the hand of fate. And a big metaphor that actually goes quite deep is the sense of sight. Sight was used to add an element of irony, which is a big piece of drama to the play. It was like there's a blind oracle who tells the able-sighted Oedipus the truth, but Oedipus can't see. But when the truth is revealed to him, he blinds himself. So it's kind of saying, like, even though people think they have the ability to see and they know what's going on, sometimes the people that you think have the least perspective on the situation can really be telling you the truth. And so before he took over the town, and they're taken by the Sphinx had these terms, and we're actually talking about like the big thing in Egypt, like it was overtaking this town, like, and it had this riddle, and whoever could answer the riddle would become king, but if you got it wrong, you'd die. So the riddle, maybe some of you have heard it. What is a creature that walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 in the evening? Does anyone know this? Yeah?
Man.
Why is that?
Because when it's 4 legs, it's like a baby. 2 legs, it's like an adult, and 3 legs, it's like an old person, like with a cane.
Spot on. Man who crawls on all 4s as an infant. Walks upright later and needs a walking stick in old age. So the next period, which, I don't know, kind of sucks. The Hellenistic period, roughly 350 BCE to 200 BCE. Not the most exciting time. Alexandria in Egypt, interestingly enough, as Jeff talked about when Greek had the port and when Julius Caesar arrived, became the center of Greek culture. It's kind of strange they moved away from their own continent even. Perhaps the biggest contribution of this time was a translation of the Old Testament of the Bible into Greek, which you could tell would take a long time. It's a thick book. But it was called the Septuagint, from the Latin word for 70, after the 72 Alexandrian scholars who did the translations. Any questions? No? All right, the end.